republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome all of you who've joined us this evening. Before we get started tonight, I'd like to ask if we could hold a moment of silence for two individuals who, in their own way, have touched our community. Ted Comstock, who's a previous executive director of the New Hampshire School Board Association, passed away, I believe, last week. I'd met him a couple of times. Steve had met him. Dave, I think you had met him. Jim may have met him, or Matt. He was a really lovely gentleman and did a tremendous amount of work for the New Hampshire School Board Association, and also for Norma Andrus, who was one of our previous food service employees who passed away in the last few days as well. She was, in Steve's word, the quintessential lunch woman who served students with a smile every day and was a big part of our community. And I don't recall when she left, but it was a good 8-10 years ago.
She was amazing. I worked with her when I was principal.
At principal, yep. So I'd just like to hold a brief moment of silence for both of these individuals. Great, thank you very much. Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
No, I just did want to clear up in the board notes. I put in unemployment workers comp at 16,181.78. It was really 26,181.78. So I apologize. So what we're going to talk to is about payment holiday labor in the agenda for about $26,000.
Great, thank you. Any correspondence this evening?
I just want to bring the attention. I've been in discussions with the Hopkinton Education Association leadership about the district proposed calendar that the board approved a couple of weeks ago. There's language in the collective bargaining agreement about how whenever possible, have a certain length of summer. And when that language was put in, it's ambiguous language, it's not great language, but it was considered when the leadership team and I looked at the calendar and protracted it out. One of the things that I've done in the last 8, 9, 10 years as superintendent is one of the innovations that we've made in the calendar is a no later than date. That no later than date has helped families and school personnel plan and get work done. And so that third Friday in June has been established as really in the most recent years and even beyond the no later than date. By starting on the week of the 19th, we maintain the third Friday in June and still have the Summer Academy approach. They've raised some concern that reduces the length of the summer, so the question is whenever possible. It is possible, but that means we move the later than date, which I was not comfortable doing. So there is some question of whether or not the board wants to reconsider, if you want to hear from the HEA, if you want to hear more from me, but that has been a correspondence with the leadership of the HEA regarding the contract, and I don't know what the appetite is. But I wrote about it in board notes, and that's a gist of the concern from the Hopkinton Education Association regarding next year's calendar. It's an earlier start than typical for teachers, not for kids, but for teachers. So you can think about that, and I can communicate, but I'm looking for some direction from the board. Do you want to revisit it? Do you want to hear from them? Do you want me to whatever you'd like? But there is some talk that they may try to look for more critically and supportive of that whenever possible language.
So I think what I'd like to do is have the board sort of think about what their input is in terms of whether or not they would like to speak about it further. I'd like Aviva also to have that opportunity, and I haven't had a chance to talk with her about it yet as well, and then make a decision as to what direction we want to give Steve to respond to the concerns from the union. And is the board comfortable with that approach right now at this point?
Well, is there a sense of urgency from HEA? I mean, I don't know because that might take us a little while to do that. I just don't know how urgent they're looking for an answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would all like to, we'd like to finalize so people can start making plans. So in the next couple of weeks, I think would be okay. Yeah. And as you just reflect, do you believe the third Friday in June is what's best for kids? Because there's no way to have the start date where we want it and keep that, or do we blow the third Friday in June end date and move it? Because that's really it. And I have established that, and through some grueling snow day decisions, no, I'm just kidding, to keep that third Friday in June as it. So you can just let me know. But if we can do it, if you have some feedback, the sooner rather than later, so we can finalize and have the committee make plans.
Yeah, and Steve, was the calendar shared with the union prior to?
The Professional Learning Committee, which was made up of teachers and administrators, worked on that date, and they sent that start date to us. I did not originate the start date.
Sure.
I don't believe it was shared with you in leadership, but I think some of those teachers were members of the HEA.
Okay. So they had a chance to comment on the calendar
Some teachers did.
prior to us. I mean, we had it on our docket for several meetings, so it was out circulating. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll put it on to the next available agenda, which should be in the next few weeks
Sure.
to address. Thank you. In the packet, is that all on correspondence, Steve?
That's it.
Okay, great, thank you. In the packet was one set of minutes from the regular board meeting held on January 10th, 2019. If you had a chance to take a look at them, I'll entertain a motion to approve that set of minutes.
So moved?
In a second.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion on those minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. At this point, we've arrived at the first section of public comment. Clearly, you guys aren't at Market Basket or Hannaford stocking up for the weekend. So if you'd like to provide some input to us or wait for the second opportunity toward the end of the meeting, you're more than welcome to. If you would like to provide it now, just if you could step up to the microphone and lean in. All set right now? We'll wait for the second set. Great, thank you. Comments from the Hopkinton School Board. Sam, thank you so much for being here tonight. Anything you want to provide us in terms of comments at this point?
Just a thank you to the teachers at the high school who, through the midterm exams, are more often than not putting in more time than the students are in terms of extra time outside of school to prepare for these exams and help the students through them. So just a thank you to the extra time that they're putting in right now.
Great, thank you for that input. Appreciate it. Matt?
I'm okay for now. Yeah,
All
thank you
set?
very much.
Jim?
I think I gave the same shout out last meeting, but I want to do it again. I want to thank the leadership team and Michelle and Matt, and especially Steve, who I seem to see before I head home every night and then wake up with emails and texts from him in the morning about budget committee stuff. But you guys are doing a great job and putting a lot of work and time and effort into this, so thank you very much for all you're doing.
Dave?
Great. Sure, thanks, Liz. Yeah, I just want to just sort of quick report out full-day hearings today in House Education, a lot having to do with education funding, particularly restoring stabilization grants to communities that have really been devastated by the loss of that money. But I think interesting for the Hopkinton School Board was that we also took a look at a bill that would lift the moratorium on school building aid, and it would increase or it would change the level of funding from no more than $50 million a year to at least $50 million a year. And what that would do is enable the school building aid fund to continue to support the bonds that have already been issued, but it would open the door in the first year to nearly $20 million worth of new projects, which isn't much, given that there's nearly $700 million in proposed projects on the books. But there was also discussion that that building aid could support projects either prior to a town vote or following a town vote. So anyway, it's something that obviously I'll be following, but I hope others will follow it too. And there'll be a lot more education funding bills coming through, and hopefully we'll make some progress to provide meaningful property tax relief.
Dave, thank you so much. I just would like to add a thank you to Michelle and Steve and the administrators and the staff. We are in the busiest time of the year in this community. There's a lot of effort that's going on behind the scenes as well as out in front, and I appreciate the board support with the additional meetings that we've had to schedule based on timing of everything. I know it's what I like to call it, Jim said to Jim, it's more like meeting fatigue after a while when there's so many nights of meetings, and I appreciate everybody doing everything they can to arrange their schedules to be able to be present as much as possible, understanding that we all have commitments that we've made prior to this that sometimes are difficult to change, so thank you. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Steve for the presentation and staff reports.
Sure, and Chris, thanks for coming. As I've talked about last couple of weeks, there's been a lot going into this year's program of studies, including the main producer and developer having some significant health issues. And I know people have helped Michelle get through this, as well as some curriculum change issues or just discussions. So tonight is a proposed program of studies. You will see some items, and Chris will explain the shaded in, shaded out. And obviously, by the number of sections that are allocated based on signups, this could change as well. But Chris, thanks for coming, and I appreciate just introducing some of the major substantive changes to this year's document.
Sure. So in the memo I supplied to the board are the different areas of content that we have delivered in our school. You will see that they're not all listed there, and if there's an area that's not listed, it's because there wasn't a substantive change or a course that was grayed out or ungrayed. So just to save some paper. So if you look at the list of changes and you see that a course has been either grayed out or ungrayed, it's because if it's been regraded or brought back into the program of studies, it's because we're going to run it this year. For next year. If it's grayed out, it's because we're not going to run it. But we don't want to take it out of the program of studies for a couple reasons. One, we still want it to be seen by our students as a reminder. It's something they can plan for the previous year. And we also do that to help mitigate and help our enrollment in certain courses. So sometimes electives will run every other year. And that's a process that we started, or a practice that we started probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And it started in our area of English and running our English electives every other year. And that happened primarily because that's when we were looking at, and working with our decreased enrollment at the high school level, because we wanted to make sure that we had classes with healthy class size numbers in them. So it is a practice that we continue in all areas, or in many areas of our program of studies. So that outlines that piece. But what I want to draw your attention to are some changes that we've made in the area of math. Several years ago, the state made a new requirement that they wanted to make sure that high school seniors had the opportunity for a senior math experience in their high school year. And working with my department chairs, we went through our program of studies and we took a look at all the courses that had math embedded in them, meaning that they had a math competency or more than one math competency. So not particularly a math course, but it could be a course like a Project Lead the Way course that has a lot of math connected to it. Or it could be AP Chemistry, where there's math embedded in that course in a senior year. So we started to think about some of our other students who may not be our AP Chem students, and how would we support them. So I went to Mr. Bizarre, our department chair, who drove a lot of this work with his department to take a look at what we currently have and how could we maybe change it a bit to offer a different math course at the senior level. So as you may or may not know, if you look at our program of studies, we have an Algebra 1A and a 1B course, and we continued that content and that curriculum into an Algebra 2A and 2B. What we're finding is because of the strong instruction that happens at the elementary schools in math, because we've adopted the new math program several years ago, that we're finding that as students go through the 1A and 1B program at the high school, they're getting a strong foundation at the elementary, and that's helping them to accelerate their math understanding. And so what we're doing, or would like to do for next year, is at the junior level, have an Algebra 2 co-taught course, where some of those students who need just extra support and work in smaller groups. So it's a course that would be taught by a math teacher and a special education teacher to help some of those students who need that extra support with their math proficiency and learning that content. In the senior year, the senior math course, instead of going to an Algebra 2B in their senior year, would have the option, this would be open to all students, but it would still be through current teacher recommendations in their junior year as they get ready to participate in their course selections, which would happen the next couple of weeks. But it would be a course intended for seniors who are interested in personal finance, learning more about personal finance, and continuing with their algebra content. So it's a little different. It's a new course for us, but we're looking forward to implementing that course where students have the opportunity to learn a little bit more about personal finance at the same time as continuing on with some of the algebra curriculum. So that would be a change on our mathematics that we have not seen before. or two changes actually that we haven't had before. The co-taught course for Algebra 2 and then the senior math. So I'll stop there before I go on if there's any questions.
Go ahead. Yeah,
Just a comment, thanks very much, Liz. On the senior math course, I think there is some, in fact, I know there is some interest at the community college system level to have a better connection between math, or the math, I guess, you know, what math a graduating senior knows to be able to perform or succeed in college math at the community college level. And I've heard the chancellor talk about this. I don't know, did this come out of any of that type of discussion?
Steve and I have talked about the AccuPlacer.
With the chancellor and superintendent?
The AccuPlacer.
Yeah, and I think it's even in the course description that talks about that. So it's important for us, too, to help support those students who, if they are moving towards, you know, community college system, that they're able to be better prepared to take that AccuPlacer. You know, as you know, there are studies that are showing there are more and more students who are having to retake math courses in college and pay for them because they're not ready and prepared for that. I think we have a very strong math department. I think we have very strong math teachers. So I don't have data to say that our kids are not prepared. I think they are very well prepared. But again, this is just another step we can take to ensure that they are prepared and we're meeting the school district goals of High School Plus.
Terrific.
The plan is for most students in that area to take the AccuPlacer and target instructions so they leave here, pass the AccuPlacer so they don't have to remediate, because we know kids who remediate in the community college system are looking for something different than traditional school, and they don't complete. So I appreciate Chris very much in the AccuPlacer. This is definitely designated for that.
Great, thank you.
And I would just like to add,
Sure.
on the personal finance side, I think it's fantastic that you're focusing on that. I just know because I have a college graduate who, you know, upon entering college and I think even exiting college, you know, it's not something you learn just pick up on the street, learning how to do your finances. And so having that taught early, sort of in high school, would be extremely beneficial for kids who are going to college or even not going to college.
Yeah.
Help them make some of those decisions, understand compounding interest, what credit card debt actually looks like, what one can afford when they graduate. It's a huge life skill that I'm glad we're going to start focusing on in our schools.
And Mr. Brizard worked with Mr. Nato, who teaches economics, and there is some of that in economics, but we're looking to allow the senior math course to kind of go a little bit deeper with that and understanding for our students.
Thank you.
Any other
Anecdotally, two of my children said they wish they had been required to take it in high school. How's that?
And that had come up when we had talked about graduation
The civics,
requirements.
yeah.
And I'm wondering, you know, when we entered into that conversation again, I would like to see something like this be required for graduation.
Yeah, so.
Well, I think this, and I think this is an excellent starting place. Jim and I have talked about that, as well as, you know, what pathway will this lead us on as a school as we continue to look for ways to improve our delivery of instruction in the area of math, and it may grow into a full-year course, just in personal finance, or it may become a standalone semester-long course in personal finance. Those are some of the things we've talked about. So there may be more to come on that in years to come.
Maybe I can come back and take it. That'd be great.
What's that?
I said maybe I can come back and take
Sure,
it.
we'll offer. It's in the contract. Teachers can teach at night. We can open it up to adults. And I just wanted to point out. So next to underneath where it says senior math after one credit, and you have the A2, A3, S1, C2. Those codes are connected to, and that's why I included our core values and beliefs and learning expectations in that packet. So those are connected to the competencies under academic, social, and civic competencies that we have outlined, and these are our overarching competencies that we hope to achieve and have our students graduate with. So those are connected to those. So as you take a look at that more, you have a better idea that it's not just cores or core content competencies, but more overarching competencies too that we're reaching towards. Another area that we've been working hard on with Mark Dixon is our area of chemistry. So if you take a look underneath science, you're going to see there's been some changes to our approach to chemistry. Right now, we have an introductory to chemistry and physics. We're running 3 chemistry courses, and then we have AP Chem. So Mark started this conversation it had to have been in the fall, because that's typically when we start these conversations, when we're taking a look at the program of studies, and we're asking for teachers, if they're going to offer a new course or would like to offer a new course, they bring that forward to the Curriculum Council through a SAPATA process. And through that process, they outline what the course is, and build their case around why they would like to offer that. In the area of chemistry, we're looking to offer 2 different pathways to achieve chemistry credit. So if you look at the course descriptions there, we still will offer a chemistry course, and then the new course will be chemistry for physical scientists. And if you read through those different course descriptions there, they're slightly different. But the main difference here, I think, for us is that in the 4th quarter, it will allow the teacher of chemistry, which is Mr. Brond, who does an excellent job, to offer additional units of chemistry for those students who may be going into the science field. The regular chemistry course will be for those students who are interested in science, are serious students, but may not be going down that road. But it's also will be helpful for our students who may be going to nursing. We've been finding that we've had several instances where students who want to go into nursing but have not performed as well as chemistry or in chemistry to be accepted into the chemistry program that they're applying to. So we're really trying to, again, do the best that we can to meet the students where they're at and the needs of students, and try to diversify a little bit our approach to chemistry. Mark's been a huge component behind this, and I don't know that I've met with a department chair as many times about changes with their curriculum as I have with Mark. He's a deep thinker. He's passionate about this. He has taken a lot of time to think this through and bringing this to us. So those are 2 new courses that would be in the program of studies. Again, you can see the overarching competencies that those courses are listed to. They do hit quite a few of our overarching competencies out of our CVBLE document. And so the other piece to this is that we are going to run it as a pilot. And the Curriculum Council is going to give us some essential questions for us to be considering, because this is a substantial change to core curriculum. So when we receive those essential questions, we'll be utilizing those essential questions to basically take a look at these and analyze them to see how well they're working for our students. The other piece that we did to this before we brought it to Curriculum Council was we did a survey with our freshmen and asked them about these 2 different types of courses and which direction they would go. And the survey did support that there would be interest in enough students in going one of the 2 directions. So we started with a SAPATA. We went to a survey. I asked Mark to do that. Mark did that. We brought it to Curriculum Council. There was a lot of discussion there. There was a lot of discussion at the leadership level as well. And I appreciate the support of the leadership team to bring, this is one of probably the more substantial changes we've made to our program of studies in a long time. So I'm happy to answer questions there as well.
Any questions for Chris at all at this point? The only comment, Chris, I was going to ask was, is there any way to add an asterisk at the beginning of these courses that have been added to be able to give the parents and the students a little bit of additional delineation between what's new? The things that are new courses, so that when you're perusing through the program of studies, it catches your eye and you go, that's it. I mean, even for students who are looking to see what they might want to do their junior, senior years and they're planning things out, that they say, oh, well, that's a new course. I don't remember us having that, or you know, and I don't know if that's helpful or not to parents.
No, I think it's a great idea, and I can the letters that we send home to parents, you know, I can draw attention to it in that letter as well. That there are several new courses. You'll see them under these departments, and they'll be outlined or identified with the asterisk. So we can do something like that.
I was going to say, just having it was you're perusing through the options that are being offered, especially if you're looking at alternate year courses, and you're trying to plan out what you might need to take one year as a prerequisite for another course, and making sure that you don't skip over something inadvertently. Kind of thing. I think it'd be great. Somebody just to highlight. And as I recall, correct me if I'm wrong. As I recall, that we also, you know, gauge input from students and teachers on on areas of interest of study for things such as electives, and I think especially in terms of history and English. Are we still doing that in terms of, I know one year we added, was it Western civilization or something that was something we had never offered before because there was lots of interest.
Well, the last time the social studies department did it was when we added military history. Mr. Krogman had a student who came to him with the idea, and they talked further about it, and then that idea just continued to grow. And he did a survey of social studies students that he saw, and he went to the other social studies classes to make sure we could get as much feedback as possible. And that's, again, that's a process that I try to remind our department chairs to do, like we did with science. I think some of our better ideas have come from our students. Over the last 2 years now, we've had our Tuesday topics in guidance, where guidance was meeting, with our seniors to talk about college planning, and that grew into a different format for this year, which I had mentioned earlier. That was a student idea. And that came from when Mrs. Gagnon and I would go to our civics, the civics classes, and we would just spend an hour with our kids listening to their feedback. And we brought that back. So anytime we have a chance to do that, I think it's a great opportunity for the kids to be able to share their voice.
And as long as there's a sort of a process or a pipeline to be able for students and parents to provide that feedback that allows them to have that opportunity. I think it's great. I think it's great. So, any other questions from the board? We do have this on the agenda tonight to, pardon me?
Yes.
To approve. It is an action item, so I just want to make sure we're all set to move forward with that when we get to that part of the agenda.
Can I just ask one more question?
You bet.
I was just surprised by it, and I don't know if there's a reason for it. Under world languages, that French 1 was grayed out, and I'm just sort of
That's a
curious
good question.
how the languages flow.
That's at the high school level. So every other year, ninth graders or all high school students have the opportunity to enroll in either a French 1 or Spanish 1 course at the high school level. Why not German? It's because we don't have the number of teachers in order to offer that. Errol Olson is teaching a full course load, but we do have the opportunity because we have multiple Spanish teachers and French teachers to alternate that every other year. And we've seen an increase of students taking more than one language, I think, because of that. So there's a benefit to offering that, not just for students who didn't take world language in middle school, but for students who really enjoy studying a language. They can start again in high school with a new language altogether. And the World Language Department has done a nice job with just introducing an organic world language approach to their teaching. And I think that's just engaging students more. And the other reason why we offer that in the high school level at a level 1 is because sometimes we have middle school students who don't take a world language in middle school. And so it allows them to maybe receive services in other areas and then start as a high schooler.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, Steve, turn it back to you. Thank you so much, Chris.
You can have a hall pass to
Yes, you can have a hall
to go on to your
You might need to hand
I don't have another one, so not tonight.
Yeah, milk and bread.
Chris, thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Thanks.
Appreciate you coming. We're going to keep just rolling.
Yes, please.
So wanted to provide an opportunity just to revisit the facility renovation expansion project. Jim, in the packet is the one dated 16, January 19, the blue gray. If you want to speak to that.
Do you want me to walk through that?
Yeah, if you want to walk through. So last week there was a proposal of reducing or sending a different bond, and Jim did some homework. So if you want to go through that, that would be great.
Sure, I did cram for the test. So at our last meeting, we did, I think there was a consensus of the board to move two bonds forward. One was $2 million less than the other one, so we have paper on the $9.796 million. So this is the $7.796 million. And so I went back and went through the list of what this one-pager shows on the left-hand side are the items that constitute the changes to the scope of the project under the safety and security and deferred maintenance columns that we had. So the other items, the 4 classroom additions, the office expansion, and the science labs are consistent among both of the bond amounts. And it's just the change of the $2 million in the deferred maintenance and safety and security. So that's what that middle column shows, with the green block showing the totals, how you get to the 7.796 million. And then the column on the right is just to be fully transparent. I just listed what was not included in that number. So all the numbers on the right were and items were included in the $9 million bond amount, but not in this proposal coming forward. So that's what this shows. I had sent it to Steve and Michelle to look over to make sure that my my math was correct and I got the numbers to add up, which I passed, which was great. And then last night at the Budget Committee meeting, which I know we'll talk about in a few minutes, and then sort of a rehash of where we were, I introduced this so the Budget Committee has the information that's presented as well.
Great, thank you.
So, I
Yeah,
think the consideration is sending this document and the yellow worksheet document that was created with the whole to the bond hearing next week as the key presentation components to receive public input. Does that work?
Yes,
Perfect.
yes.
And so if you indulge me, I just want to run through the schedule a little bit, where we are. So just so everybody, there is not a meeting tomorrow morning. So at one point, we had held that meeting for Hess ratification. Hess, we have come to a tentative agreement with Hopkinton Educational Support staff. They are planned to have a ratification vote next Wednesday. If that is a snow day or something happens, they have a tentative date Thursday. The board has a meeting next Thursday to take on, actually the bond hearing would be next Thursday at 5. A board meeting would follow that. And the two major action items for the board is to address the bond after the public input. Do you envision sending a bond to the Budget Committee for the public hearing to March, and to ratify the Hess contract? So those are the two big things on the 24th or 25. Now, I just a little heads up. I attended a snow call today with the state, and there is a storm coming in Wednesday, Thursday next week. So it could be Thursday, Friday, right, for the bond. We did post, and it was in the newspaper, a snow date for Thursday at 5 or Friday at 5. You with me? Mm-hmm. So if you keep those dates open, that'd be great. Then I appreciate the Budget Committee voted to have a meeting on January 30th for the results of Hess, and if there's a bond going on January 30th to the Budget Committee. And then there is the public hearing is the 6th. So the Budget Committee will hear thoughts on if there is a bond and Hess, and then they will deliberate and vote. And then the 7th, February 7th, the school board has a meeting. And it is possible if the Budget Committee does not endorse or support a bond going to the meeting for the Hopkinton School Board to override. And that would have to be addressed on that February 7th. And I'd have, Rennell would prepare specific language for that contingency. And just to keep the fun going, on February 8th is the last day for petition warrant articles. And if someone does bring forward a petition warrant article, there would be a hearing, I think, by February 13th. So that's your schedule through the public hearing.
Any questions for Steve on any of those dates and the work that has to be done for those at this point?
Nothing has changed since the one I shared with you. We're all right on track. I just wanted to make sure everybody was
Okay. Yeah.
Everybody okay?
Yeah. Yes, I am. Everyone else good?
Mm-hmm. Excited.
Jim, the next one is the debrief of last night's Budget Committee meeting.
Sure, thanks. So we had a wonderful meeting last night with the Budget Committee. Many of those smiling faces are here with us this evening. So we went through, I think the beginning was the process that Steve just outlined, sort of what's the schedule of activities between now, really in February 6th when we have the public hearing, and then the Budget Committee will deliberate and then vote on our budgets. So Steve just outlined what we had talked about. We then went into the facility projects, went through each of the bonding proposals that have been forward. The Budget Committee asked a lot of good questions about the proposals, the pros and cons of them, how we deliberated over it. So it was a really good discussion. And then Steve went through a revision of the the budget bulletin, which was great that Steve and Michelle would turn around a lot of the questions that were asked at the previous meeting, sort of answers to those and some adjustments to the bulletin. And then we went through what's also in front of us is an update of the programmatic budget that the Budget Committee had asked for. And we have that. It's this nice looking long sheet, which, as we discussed at one of our previous meetings, the decision to move the benefits line throughout the rest of the programmatic budget, that was greatly appreciated. And then I know Steve, with Matt's assistance, provided information that's here with us tonight as well about the number of students. This is something else the Budget Committee asked for. So the top sheet is the students in each of the topics like English, Social Studies, Science. So the total numbers in grades 6 through 12. And then you could go through the attached sheets and see how many students are in each of those courses under those topic headers. So I know this was more than a nothing to produce, and so I really want to thank Matt for taking the time and going through this, and Steve for also working on this. I know the Budget Committee both voiced a lot of appreciation for the work being done and for the efforts that both the board and staff have made on the programmatic budget. I think they were very happy, and members of the public also expressed their gratitude. At their next meeting of the Budget Committee, which will be on Wednesday, their schedule is to really start digging in and deliberating on the operating budget that we submitted to them. And then I think the only piece, Steve may have more that I totally forgot, but the only piece that the Budget Committee had asked of us is on our warrant that we put forward, they had asked if we would be willing to consider recording the votes on the warrant, so it would have, the school board voted whatever on this item, and the Budget Committee voted whatever their vote would be on the item. The town does this on the warrants. I know some districts do it and some don't. So the Budget Committee just asked if we would consider doing that, and I said I'd bring it back to this board for discussion. And I think when we talked about it, it was the board decision on how we present it. I believe that's correct, but.
I'd like Viva to have the opportunity also to, to consider the request. So, I think that having the discussion is very appropriate. And if we, is the response needed as of next week, or not really until the warrants?
Yeah, I mean, if it's our decision, I'm not sure. I think it's on our time frame to give it back to them. I think I told them I'd bring it here for discussion. Right.
So what I'd like to do is to have the full board to be able to discuss that, if that's appropriate, and then we'll respond obviously appropriately to make sure that that we get that feedback. So, but Aviva doesn't know anything about it as far as I know. So I just want to make sure that that she has the opportunity to hear also that rationale. So if we can respond to them next the following week, that'd be great. That would be great.
Steve, did I leave anything out?
No, I thought it was great. We're going to add grid lines, and we're going to add a column. That was it. Those are minor, and I'm going to make sure that when we do the column, that's going to be a person entered, not program driven. So we want to make sure that it's not as accurate as the report itself, but we will make sure we note that. And look forward to keep coming. But thank you. I appreciate all your work very much, Jim.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And Jim did it. The next item is just to go through, and this is the January 10th budget bulletin. And Michelle did extraordinary work there from the previous one, 20 pages maybe, Michelle, something like that, change. This is all on the web already under, or actually will be soon. I think I've sent the link out. So these will all be available. And as you go through, if you need to have questions, they've updated the big spreadsheet. There's also a sheet in here about unpacking FTEs, if you want to take a look at. This was presented to the Budget Committee last night, so they can understand budget to budget what the FTEs were done. So all that is there.
Great, thank you. Lots of good tools.
Up next, I just wanted, and Mr. Trom brought this up, I think, at the last Budget Committee, we were fortunate, and it's not often that you hear Michelle Clark turn to the superintendent of schools and say, wow, we have good news. And then that it really doesn't happen that often. And then she sent over some forms. So we got Primex based on 2017 claims in workers' compensation unemployment. They gave a choice, either a payment holiday for next year or taking the money as revenue this year. And as I wrote about in board notes, for us it's about a little over $26,000. We've had significant expenses that weren't accounted for, starting with the Harriman, right? We said Harriman report over the summer, so they could go iteration number 2. What we talked about last night at the budget committee, the funds necessary to generate the programmatic budget form, the streaming equipment here, and of course special ed. So it has been my recommendation, and actually to start the process as soon as we could, to take that money as revenue now. It was last year, so we found out about it. Typically, we take it as revenue in this year. And we certainly, as Michelle has taught me for years, we always budget all the expenses, and this would be revenue connected to that. In the old days, we actually got some help. No, we got help. Remember, in the old days, we got help back. And we took it as revenue at that time. That's been our standard practice. I did talk with Neil today, just to get some thoughts on what the town is going to do. And they're looking to use that for some additional renovations, or maybe, but we understand that component. So for us, it is to take it as revenue now. It's good news to offset some of the expenses.
Any questions from the board for Steve on that? No? Great, thank you.
And again, thanks to Michelle for producing the monthly financial. It does, and this is hard for Michelle. We work so closely together. She knew those faithful words we weren't looking forward to. Her recommendation is to control spending, to scrutinize spending through the superintendent to make sure we meet our unreserved fund balance goal. It's a little bit dispiriting, not only because, if everybody is aware, I had a tough, we all had, Chris and I had a tough day on Monday with some weather issues and inside weather issues. As you've heard, there's some concerns about calendar, and now we're looking to scrutinize budgets. So it's a little bit, it's a little bit, but making sure we meet our unreserved fund balance goal is important. Michelle and I spent a lot of time talking about this recently, about how much is left and on her expertise, and she has extraordinary expertise in managing the unreserved fund balance. And I certainly trust her judgment on how we look at it. And what it means is that I rely on the building principals to be the first threshold, and then they go to Michelle and me, and if these are absolutely necessary, we do it, but if it's not, then we don't. We're trying to make sure we conserve in the next 4 months, see where we're at. We typically, just to put this in context, by May 1st, almost everything, I mean, it's really just what's left. So it's really, you know, January, whatever today is, through May 1st is what we're looking at. Michelle, do you want to elaborate, take a look at the numbers more?
No, you did a great job. And if anyone has any question, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
All you guys all set? Okay, great.
So we'll continue to report out, but starting, we will have additional scrutiny to each expenditure. And I have an opportunity for an all-district staff. And as many of you know, starting with why, this notion of why is important. So why will we be talking with why? This isn't because of a controlling superintendent. This is because of unanticipated expenses and keeping our word and our commitment to the taxpayer, which we take very seriously. We're not cavalier at all.
Thank you.
And the last piece on the agenda, Hopkinton High School NHIAA Student Leadership Conference 14-15. About 6 youngsters. I think I said that in the packet in the email, heading up to Brent Woods. This is in connection to the Student Athletic Leadership Team, something that I have the privilege of working with. And we meet twice a month. Today, for example, the SALT had Rob Nato come in and talk leadership. Rob has submitted his intention to retire, so it was great to have him meet with his kids and get his view. An extraordinary message about leadership, and so they go back and they learn skills with Dan. They come back and we continually develop our students as leaders. So I appreciate the approval of that. I know Dan would, that trip tonight.
Great. Any questions for Steve on the overnight trip?
That's great.
All right, well, we will move to our second opportunity for public comment at this time. If this is an opportunity to step on up to the microphone.
Norm Kupel. Quick question. What is the process for making a course mandatory in order to graduate?
Yeah, Steve, or
There's actually it's policy. We have a graduation requirement policy.
For like they have to take like the budget course, the finance course. I think that is an absolute fantastic opportunity for this school to make a really good statement to students. There's so many students that leave here, sign a promissory note, don't know how to write a check, don't know the ramifications of a credit card, and there's so many things that I would have done differently, understanding going into your freshman year of my personal life as opposed to my education. The benefits of that course is, unfortunately, there's going to be students that do not go to college. And just understanding basic finance to make it through life and not have that opportunity to go to college just compounds if they don't understand the ramifications of signing their name on all these credit card receipts or buying a car and not understand the ramifications of the difference between a lease and buying a car or negotiation when it comes to basic decisions that we made poorly as adults when we were young. So I ask you guys to consider it and make it an option, somehow in the school, that there's going to be students who are not going to want to take it, that maybe are a little smarter with understanding how to manage their money, but you're going to have those students that don't understand, that have a platform for not understanding their basic finance. So I would like you guys to think about and propose that you make that a required course before they graduate Hopkinton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the input. Anybody else at this juncture in the meeting? John?
Thanks. I've got sort of a random list of questions I just wanted to clarify. I asked a question last week about the $48,000 on the elevator. What does that buy us? And I haven't had an answer back yet.
I know Jay did reach out to Dan Bisson and Mark Lee from Harriman. I don't believe he's received anything back yet, but he did follow that up.
Okay, so that'll be coming. The whole question of the sprinklers, is that still on the table to try to figure out what in this bond will be addressing that or not addressing it?
As I presented, based on the engineering number and based on the sole bid that we have, I'm not comfortable standing behind either one of those numbers as a solid funding level for that change. Michelle and I spoke actually today. She's been communicating with another district that had a cistern issue. Their cost was actually somewhere in the middle between the two. And so we're planning on to redesign a bid with multiple engineering approaches to the cistern to see if we can get a better number. We also want to look with a water and a company to see what the well, if an on-site well, has us on. So to me, there's too many questions to be able to go to the town and stand behind a number at this March meeting. But that's just my opinion.
So that'll be quote unquote phase 2 then at some position. It will not be this year's.
It would not be in the.
If a school board thinks that's a priority to do, there is nothing mandatory in this project that would require us to do it.
Correct.
But it will, if it's not done, certainly any board has the ability to plan for that expense over time, or building aid. We have we will continually to pursue this. As I said, Chief Yale, the first time he said, someone from the department said this was the biggest concern. We put $30,000 into roof ladders, and this one we have not forgotten this. It was just unfortunate that we couldn't get a solid number to back up the bid.
He has some pretty strong opinions that we need to do it. It's
right.
But it's obviously a question of dollars. The elevator and the access and all of that, that's still being considered as some kind of function to that? Because I noticed in the NEAS report, that's still one of the highlighted items that we're still deficient at, is the whole accessibility. Is that going to try to be addressed by maybe cutting back on science labs or whatever and address that hallway elevator issue? Or is that off the day? I just want to try to separate these things as I try to figure out where I'm going to come out on recommendation.
The way the two options for the bond, the proposal were presented last week, was the $9 million option, which included the improvements to Harold Martin, the science labs, and then the remainder was the deferred maintenance. The proposal that Jim suggested that is also going to go to the bond hearing is the $7 million option, which was the Harold Martin improvements, the science labs, and then a lesser number for deferred maintenance. So after all of the discussions over the last few months about the pieces, this board felt last week that where we are right now with the elevator and that entire entrance, which at the original last fall was presented as an $8 million option, was not in the best interest of the community, the students, the project, to peel away pieces from that without having more time to really look at the options that were there. So instead of shotgunning that in a month's time and trying to make something happen, that was where this board landed last week, was to put that particular aspect of the original project off to a future time, and whether that future time may be decided by next year's board or the following year's board, those are discussions that will happen post-March, depending on what happens at the bond hearing, and then whether something goes to March.
Well, my only concern of that is if we go with a $9 million bond this year, there's not much chance in my mind that we'll be able to come back and go after another bond for something, a pretty significant item, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, $5 million, to pick up these other items that we're missing. And NEASC is saying, these are significant items for accreditation.
Thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate the input. That we've had long discussions about all of that. Yes, thank you.
The bond description, that again, it was just an example, I think, Steve, what you had. It was kind of interesting how that the temporary pieces. I'm looking at your memorandum, the bond process, and it showed that $9.4 million. And it included the classrooms at Harold Martin for $3 million, the science at $2 million, and then 2 portable classrooms at $250K and 4 portable at $500. It didn't mention in there the deferred maintenance and the safety access, and that's about $3.6 million.
Right, that was an example to the board of putting different options of only to consider for separate bonds. One of the concern in the board, so just voted to, but I tried to give them options that if they wanted to, they could do a bond just for science labs. If they wanted to, they can do a bond just for classrooms. And if they wanted to, they can have a backup reserve ultimate that and Bill, one of his comments, what are we going to do if the classrooms fail? And one alternative to that in schools of use is portable classrooms, but that still costs significant money. So if one of the ways, and spend a lot of time talking to people, they could certainly amend it, though, if the 9.4 fails, 7 fails, 5 fails, you can amend it down to do something. But I was just trying to describe the possible options for the board to put as articles. It wasn't a comprehensive, it was a proposal of different options.
Okay, moving on to the temporary classroom. The sheet that you had, I have difficulty figuring out what there's three possibilities here. One is a solid construction, and that's at $3.3 million. Then you have the temporary classrooms, either renting or buying them. I couldn't, by going through your description here, really, in my mind, understand the total cost of each of those 3 options. The latter two are the ones, the lease cost in total. How much is that? I don't know whether you can figure that out now or not, but I need that answer. I don't know whether the numbers here represent one unit that has 2 classrooms in it, or
is that my
4
my
classrooms.
portable memo?
Correct.
Portable memo? 2, I think, I don't have it right in front of me, but I think it's $245 all in on the purchase.
Is that for 4 rooms?
2.
2 rooms.
2
rooms.
Because I think I said that night, I don't think we have site space for 4 at Harold. I think we can put 2 in that alcove, but I don't think 4 will fit, and I don't think there's an appetite to put it that far on the field. So I'm a 2 classroom guy.
Which would be 1 unit.
1 unit of 2 for $245, including the pad and connection fees.
And the purchase, in essence, of 1 unit would be what?
That's it, $245.
Okay. If you lease them, then what would it be?
And I thought I put that in the memo. I think
it's in there, but I can't.
And I'll do it for you. But there was at the end, I believe it comes out to be a little bit more expensive.
To lease.
I think it's more expensive to lease than to buy when you have the exit charge at the end. But Michelle and I will do it together. I like that stuff. I like to work with her.
Thank you.
Thanks,
I'll happily get that to you.
Sorry, Liz, and I apologize for missing this last week, but can somebody just summarize what the discussion was last week on the NEASC letter? Because I missed that. I'm just curious, because it is, to Don's point, it's not a very nice letter. So I'm curious what the discussion was last week here, because it's a good point. I mean, are we considering any of the items that NEASC mentions here in the discussions?
The accessibility, a part of the accessibility is addressed in the 9.7. That includes all the FM system and accessibility to curriculum. The science, the water eyewash stations are addressed through the renovations of the science lab. The safety and security was addressed already based on the controlled access. The delivery pathways was somewhat addressed because now no one can get into the building. And if Chris wanted to, anytime there was a delivery, he could, like we did for the last 8 months, send someone down to escort them to the place. So the deliveries these aren't ideal, but the ideal solution was $29 million. That wasn't feasible, but we took care of comprehensive NEASC, that was full accessibility. But to get down to 9.6 or 7.6, it's not a full-throated effort, but it is a real effort and a substantive effort. So I believe, the science labs, the accessibility, the delivery of the pathway, but the safety and security, the security interests, I think we've accomplished. Chris and I were both surprised because that was included in our updated report that they notched that one. The accessibility of the library is not addressed. And I guess the question is, we went from 29 million down to 9.6 with 3 open questions. One open question is the sprinklers at Harold. Don't have a good number for you. If we're going to go to the community, a good number I think is important. We have not asked any engineer, whether Marinese or Dan Bisson or Mark Lee, to unfettered by entrances and unfettered by any other barrier, to somehow plan better access for that classroom and that library. And without that charge and without that coming back, I don't feel good about saying it's 2 million because that's in the air. But it does. The 9.7 addresses some accessibility.
Yeah, I mean, this is a final warning shot. I mean, and it's almost a slap in the face, right? It says we received a pretty stern warning in 2009. The committee expressed its grave concern over the lack of progress. I mean, it is. If we do not feel very confident, and I remember last year we felt pretty good about how we were responding to the letter that we received in November. If we do not feel extremely confident with our response, I mean it's almost negligent because I'm sure the rest of the board had read this letter too, but it is a final warning shot that we need to be fully prepared for.
To be clear, what I felt confident in that we would not move off warning status, and that was proved fruition. We put millions of dollars in for maintenance. We did a whole bunch of stuff. We did a lot. Chris did a lot of curriculum. The next question does, a high school project, just if you subtract, so a high school project of $3 or $4 million, because we have district-wide issues, but high schools of $3 or $4 million, will that continue us on warning, or will that? No one knows. They won't give you the menu. You do this, we'll take you off warning. It's a capacity issue, and so right now we are frozen. Unless you want, there is. Michelle and I could work through this, but I did look at there is, in order to go up from the 9.7, you have to have another bond hearing, and it's got to be warned for 7 days. So Matt, if you had the appetite based on reading that, you know what? I want to put the 8.1, you put $8.1 million in this and you get a $17.5 million, there's no way that that's not going to take care of accreditation.
Right.
Because that is full accessibility, that's new office, and that nails it. That's a $17.1 million project. In order to do that, you would have to warn another bond hearing, put another ad in the paper, and do that, I think. There is time, but it's tight. That's all.
So, Steve, just to just to summarize this, so obviously the facility committee did not have the benefit of the most latest NEASC one, but we did have the one from 2016.
Yeah, in all, yeah.
2016, which was a more substantial, list of things, and it obviously included accessibility on it. And I think it was and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the facility steering committee's best analysis that, and obviously assisted by Harriman, that the deferred maintenance and basic safety, security, accessibility address those needs, and that's why it was called basic. And that if you wanted a much more robust plan that did not drop students off in a classroom or require walking through the library to get to the gym, then a more comprehensive entryway approach was the direction Harriman took us down. But I mean, am I sort of getting that right, Steve? That at least in the steering committee's analysis, that we felt that it addressed NEASC's basic concern.
Oh yeah, no, I have no doubt that the plan as proposed
No, I'm talking about the deferred maintenance, basic safety, security, accessibility.
The original six, what was it?
That's in now?
What you've got in there right now, which has the security items that have already been addressed.
The only thing it doesn't hit, well, in the 7.7, it takes out all the FM systems throughout the district. That is one of the items that addresses accessibility.
I'm not talking about 7.7. I'm talking about the 9.7.
But the 9.7 has some accessibility. I think it hits everything except, and I think Chris can write, and I think we can adjust, like the locker room piece. We're not addressing the locker room with $1 million addition. He's procedurally changing how we let people in and lock them all day. Same thing with the clear pathways. If this is what we have to do, then what Chris will institute is a procedure that anytime anybody's delivering, they will be personally escorted to the location. That will take care of that. We won't have a security issue on a delivery. Now, that takes up staffing issues, and that's it. But that's what we'll have to do. The question about the elevator, both elevators, there's Chris can be as creative as he'd like, but I don't think he can come and explain how we're hitting that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, this was just wanted to have a discussion with the board to make sure.
I appreciate that very much.
Because this is as serious a letter as I've read, and it almost feels like it's a gift. Like we've been telling you since 2009, and we ask schools to make a plan and fund it within 5 years, and it's 2019. So you're 5 years after, and I know this is a colleague. This is the gentleman that visited us. Well, his signature on it, anyways,
no,
right?
Knows.
So it's important for the community to understand how important it is that that they know the severity of the letter and what's in the proposal, because it is, again, read it. I mean, it's serious.
And I believe we have to update them after the March meeting, Matt, too, as to what progress, if any, we make with
April 1st, yeah.
this year.
Yep.
So, yeah, exactly. Thank you. Are you all set then, Matt? Thank
That's
you
it. Sorry,
thanks for bringing it up. And we did have discussion on it last week for a fair amount of time, too. So, all right. So we are. Any other public comments? Deb, I saw you getting up. Okay, good. Sorry, I got derailed there for a moment.
Quick note. I just wanted to say thank you to Chris for his presentation, and especially for the mathematics program changes that you're making, both for advancement opportunity and the opportunity for small group discussions. I think that's wonderful. For so many learners, it's so advantageous to have the opportunity to see the material, but then go back, use it in small groups. I caught that, and practice, and then process it their way. Thank you for that change. It can only lead to more success.
Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. Okay.
Rebecca Bettencourt. I'm kind of shifting maybe more with the question that was asked. I was just looking at the curriculum development and support, and I was just curious if you could help clarify that, because I know we don't have a curriculum coordinator, and I was curious where, like, something that's really important to everyone and all of our students. So I'm just
They're asking what is in
I'm
that, what does
asking
that mean?
Yeah, what is that? And, yeah.
It's a portion of Mr. Carroz's job. We reallocated a piece of his job to oversee the development of curriculum. And it's also time for staff to work on curriculum and for teams to work on curriculum. But it is not a full-time, really, we're in the development stage of creating the visible curriculum. So those efforts are in the development.
And so that's extra? So you said it's for teachers to work on it?
Correct.
And so that's something, they're getting, it's
right,
not included.
They work in the, like, we do a lot of development in collaboration in the summer.
Okay.
So it's stipended time in the summer.
Okay.
And a little bit after, like, we do have a little bit after hours, so if they work 3 to 5, but most of it's summer. And we also approve some curriculum leadership positions. We have a curriculum design specialist who's helping develop some standards and work in our form. We also have a trainer in our curriculum management tool positions. Those are stipended leadership positions. So we're also using this as developing teacher leaders. So it's administration, teacher leaders, and work development.
And I think that's important, obviously, rather than having someone outside come in and then having the teachers really kind of knowing what's going on and helping with that curriculum development. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Anybody else? Oh, yeah, sorry. Come to the mic. You gotta come to the mic, sorry.
Real quick question. But you're telling us that if this bond passes, we'll still be on warning possibly? We don't know? You don't know? You can't guarantee us? There's no third party that can come in and say this is what you need to do?
They won't do it.
So it's more or less a guessing game. We're basically saying, okay, this is what I think will help Hopkinton remain accredited.
You are more likely to stay accredited if you pass the bond and less likely if you do not, if we do not. But I think we feel comfortable saying that.
Yeah.
But
And there's been extensive discussions over the prior years. About addressing the NEASC issues since the original report was given to us, and it's been evaluated by a number of different, lots and lots of people. So the likelihood of us addressing the issues that are important and addressing them in a way that will be appropriate and NEASC will agree we've addressed it, I think is.
And I do trust you on that.
Yes, and we've given them progress reports. Chris has been, providing the right progress reports.
Yeah.
But there's also one more stage, so it doesn't go from warning to lose it.
Yeah. Okay.
It goes warning to probation to lose it.
Good.
So,
okay, this letter scared me.
And we are warning right now. We're not on
read
probation.
it.
So last year's work kept us on warning.
Okay.
And if things pass and Chris does it, then their executive board meets again.
Okay.
And if they would say, you know what, you've done it, but you haven't done, now you're on probation, that raises the stakes another level and gives the town another opportunity.
I accept that. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, good. Thank you for the clarification.
That's right?
You got it. All right, great. Any other further comments at this point in time? Otherwise, we'll move on to our action items for this evening. We only have a couple. First is I'll take a motion for the Hopkinton School Board to approve the superintendent's recommendation or accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the 2019-20 program of studies.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Chris, thank you very much to you and your staff for putting that together. Excellent. Thank you.
We got a couple edits for you.
Yeah. I'll take a motion for the Hopkinton School Board to accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the Hopkinton High School NHIAA Student Leadership Conference overnight trip, March 14th and 15th to Bretton Woods, New Hampshire.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And do we have a need for a non-public session this evening?
We don't have it.
Okay, then
It's not
we will.
time sensitive.
It's not time sensitive, then we will.
Has stuff I'll send you under separate cover. I have a nice memo describing.
So everybody all set with no non-public session this evening, then I will adjourn the meeting at 6:40. Thank you all for coming tonight. Be safe this weekend. Get the hamburgers, they're still open till 10. Probably. The world will be there tomorrow.
the earliest the meeting has ended.
I know what's going to happen. I can't go home.